It's an interesting contest. Marina Rodriguez taking on Amanda Lemos. BC, this will be, of course, in the strawweight division. Rodriguez sitting at minus 210 as it currently stands. Lemos at a plus 180. When you size these two ladies up, first things first, what are they fighting for?
Well, they're certainly fighting for positioning in this deep and always competitive 115-pound division. But I think for Marina Rodriguez, who enters as the favorite, will this be the last step she has to take as, consistently the most underrated fighter in this division to truly enter that title picture? She's won 4 in a row, and I think you can put those 4 wins, included in terms of the quality of opposition she's faced, really up against anyone in the division right now. This is not a slight at Lemos, who comes in, as you mentioned, plus 180 as an underdog. She's won 6 of her last 7, even though 2 fights ago we saw her get submitted by Jessica Andrade. I'm just looking at the title picture as it is right now. Carla Esparza is going to make the first defense of this new title reign next week, not this weekend, next weekend in New York City. Against former champion Zhang Weili. We obviously have Rose Namajunas looking to get a bounce-back fight. Will that be against Yan Xiaonan, who just defeated Mackenzie Dern? I'm not sure. But, Luke, if Marina Rodriguez in particular, specifically, wins this fight, she has to be the next number 1 contender. She's 35 years old, as is Lemos, but Marina is on a strong run right now. She looks to be title-ready. It has all the makings to be that last hurdle that she has to clear. Remember, this was supposed to be Bryce Mitchell versus Evolov. That got moved. They brought in this fight. It's a strong fight. I like that they're going 5 rounds because whoever comes out of this looking to truly enter that title picture, I want them to have earned it. Up to this point, all Marina Rodriguez has done has gone out there and earned it against tough competition.
You got to hand it to Marina Rodriguez. Listen to her strength of schedule heading into this contest. So she had a loss to Carla Esparza, then rebounded against Amanda Ribas, then rebounded against Michelle Waterson Gomez, as she's known now. Then she beat Mackenzie Dern in a very tough contest, and then she beat Yan Xiaonan. She is currently sitting, BC, in the rankings, for whatever that is worth, at number 3. The 2 people above her in the rankings would be Rose and Zhang Weili. And so below her, where Amanda Lemos comes in, is at 7. So Rodriguez arguably is already sitting in a spot where if she just waited, she could potentially get a title shot. Now, that's not guaranteed, but there's not a whole lot of great options ahead of her. Andrade is coming on, so we'll see what happens there, although I think her next fight's back at 125, if I'm not mistaken. But in either case, she's sitting at 3. She's giving a shot to someone at number 7. Given what she's already accomplished, and given that she's continuing to still fight when she probably doesn't have to, especially against someone ranked outside the top 5, highly commendable by her. Very, very commendable fighter here in not shying away from challenges, not sitting around. Again, you wouldn't blame her necessarily if she did, but she's choosing not to, and she's getting after. You got to really respect that. And, of course, they both have wins over Waterson Gomez. They have a couple of fights.
Can I ask you a question? A matchmaking question here, Luke? Mm-hmm. Okay, we just laid out kind of what's at stake here, where everyone is positioned. Obviously, I think Marina's got a heads up here for the moment on Lemos in terms of that conversation. Is there any fear, if you're Marina Rodriguez, about what you just said, the idea of has she accomplished enough with, 4 wins is 4 wins, but as you mentioned, very good names escalating. Is there a shot even with a win here that she gets passed over? I know Rose is just coming off of a title loss in one of the weirdest and most bizarre performances. She's got her documentary coming out. She's still... I still have Rose in my top 5 pound for pound because she's that great, and that fight and that loss doesn't seem to tell us where she's actually at. Is there fear in Team Rodriguez, or should there be fear that regardless of whether she wins or loses, the UFC is just going to put the winner of next Saturday's title fight in a trilogy bout against Rose anyway? Is there any fear in that, or will Rose have to come back and win and earn another crack in your eyes?
There very much could be a case where they give her another fight, because while she lost, as we all know, to Esparza, it was a really, and this is, both are to blame, but it was a really lackluster contest, and it's hard to know what to make of that. It certainly doesn't put one necessarily on great footing with the organization, but again, it was a mutual failing, and, did it really show she was out of her depth? I mean, not exactly, right? So for those reasons, based on popularity and currently her position in the rankings, is that on the table? There's just no doubt it's on the table. And BC, to double down on that answer, this is sort of the risk you run if you're Marina Rodriguez. Let's say you beat Amanda Lemos, and it's a fine fight, but it's a decision. What did you really gain with that? It's not like beating Lemos is some walk in the park. Hello, the odds are relatively close, but it's like you're beating the number 7th ranked contender. Does that meaningfully put you in a vastly different spot than you were before? For example, contrast that, and this is a a crazy example, but just to show you what's possible, contrast that with something like Sean O'Malley at 13 when they first booked it, 11 by the time the fight was happening, against the number 1 contender. Well, there you have a big spot. And to answer the question the other way around, if Lemos ends up winning this and then beats Rodriguez, well, then it really reshuffles the order. So this is a huge risk for Rodriguez, because while it will be valuable to get a win and to stay busy, that absolutely is true. It's not worth nothing. The risks are significant, and the win itself, while important, it doesn't really change the dynamic if the UFC is hell-bent on a fight with Rose again, with one exception, BC. If she goes in there and dog walks Amanda Lemos, which is not easy to do, but if she does that, that could potentially put the Rose thing even further on the back burner.
And then what do you do then? Put Rose against Mackenzie Dern, both coming off losses? I don't know. I think, like you said, the Rose star power mixed with the fact that she wasn't exposed or handled in that Esparza loss in their rematch. It was just a slow, weird, I don't understand to this moment what Rose was doing type of fight. But it's already weird enough, and it's rare, when you get a trilogy off of one person having won twice, right? We just saw that with Holloway and Volkanovski, but it's rare. In this case, there's 2 scenarios, right? If Carla wins, her and Rose could fight a third time, even though Carla won the first 2. And on the flip side, Rose beat Whaley twice, and they could run that back a third time. So interesting. I don't think anyone would cry foul necessarily, because Rose is a 2-time champion. She's a star. But it's an interesting position. I think if you're Marina Rodriguez, as you mentioned, you got to just do what you do, which is stay busy, continue to convince them. Because, Luke, the window could be closing-ish. She's 35. She's fighting at the peak of her powers now. She's not an overwhelming commercial or marketing force. Sometimes this is what you have to do, right? Keep showing up, keep winning, and then you finally get your opportunity.
One thing they could do, depending on what Andrade is up to, is they could do another fight, I think a third one now, between Andrade and Rose. They could do that. That is at least on the table, depending on what
Andrade has that 125 fight, though, which is just kind of was a curveball to us.
Here's the thing. It's like in the 2 fights ago, Andrade was back down, I think, at this weight class, and then she beat Lemos, and then Lemos rebounded against Waterson Gomez. So it's like, I don't really know exactly where Andrade is in all of this, but if 115 is on the table, that is a fight they could make. Again, we're speaking in hypotheticals here. That makes it hard to understand. Again, this is why you have to be really, really respectful of what Rodriguez is attempting here. Not a huge upside against a still very difficult opponent with very much uncertain circumstances in the division above her, giving away, or at least I should say potentially giving away, rankings position to a fighter ranked outside the top 5 who's still tough. It's highly commendable. That being said, BC, how do you size these two up? I'd like to sort of go over some of the numbers here very quickly. Strikes landed per minute for Rodriguez, 5.03, which is good. Strikes absorbed, 3.07. So she's got a positive differential of almost 2 integers. That's very high. On the other side, Lemos, 4.87 strikes landed per minute, which is very good, but she absorbs 4.4. Her defense, 48% to Lemos' 57%. Lemos, much harder to hit and still delivers much better. I want to point that out. On the grappling side, this is where it's going to be kind of interesting. For 15 minutes, Lemos just 0.2 takedowns in that 15-minute window. Over 1.07 for Lemos. So it seems like she might want to mix it up there a little bit. Takedown defense from either is okay. 81% is pretty good, actually, for Lemos. 65% for Rodriguez. Neither is a super dynamic submission threat, although, obviously, Lemos just got one over Waterson Gomez. How do you size these two up? Is it really for Lemos, it's got to be the takedown because on the feet she's overmatched?
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, I want to kind of stop your question in mid-thought and ask you, do you think these odds are right on? And it's like, Lemos has won 6 of 7, but what's her best wins in there? Okay, she beat Waterson Gomez at a time last fight where it looks like Waterson Gomez is going in that direction. She's got a split decision win over Angela Hill. The rest of those victories are against the lower tier of this division, not the, top 10 variety. I kind of feel like Rodriguez should be favored a little bit higher. Am I ignorant, Luke, in just a filthy, gross casual?
Well, I mean, maybe this is part of the reason why Rodriguez hasn't quite advanced in the way that you might imagine. Like, she beat Mackenzie Dern, and Dern made it very uncomfortable for her on the ground. But it wasn't like a truly dominating whip-her-ass kind of win. It wasn't that. And she has had some good ones. She had the win over, Montserrat Conejo. Excuse me, that's Amanda Lemos. Excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong one here. I apologize. Going back through her wins, the Hibas win was nice. The Watterson-Gomez win was nice. The Dern win was tough, and the Shawnow win was nice, but it's not like if I had to ask you what her best win was, yes, she's got some good names on there, but her most vicious highlight reel performance, it's not like it jumps out to you right away. She's just sort of consistently very good. And so I think she had, which is like in no way a knock, but she hasn't had that accelerant moment. She hasn't had that catalyst moment that really propelled her. I don't know that this does it necessarily either, but BC, it's a 5-round main event. I tend to think she looks pretty good in those. Her cardio doesn't suffer. She has very good defense on the ground, such that she needs it. And obviously, we've seen what she can do as a Muay Thai operator. I would say that I do think, in my heart of hearts, the odds should be further apart. But Lemos can be a little bit unpredictable. She definitely is offensively minded, right? Doesn't mind getting hit, which we just showed you. There can be reasons to think she could be a great disruptor. Rodriguez has looked very solid, very good, but not like crazy exceptional. And I think for those reasons, the odds are a little bit closer than you might imagine.
You know, you make a good point there. Maybe Rodriguez, despite the strong 4-fight win streak, doesn't have a dominant style. She has I don't want to call it a spoiler style, because she's not a spoiler. She doesn't come out here and upset everybody. But she has a style that just kind of counters what you do well and makes it difficult for you, right? She has the cardio, as you mentioned. She's tough in the clinch. She can strike. She's accurate. She sets a good pace. I mean, there's kind of things she does well to offset you. But you are looking at her to kind of turn that corner and potentially win this dominantly, especially in terms of her, hopes of gaining a title shot. Is that in her, though? Does she have that type of offense? She's more steady than spectacular.
Right. I mean, listen to these results in the UFC. She won her first fight in a Contender Series via KO. That's nice. But then after that, majority decision, unanimous decision, majority decision, split decision. Three of those were losses, by the way, to Esparza and Randa and then Cynthia. And then, of course, she had the nice KO against Amanda Hebos, and that was on that Poirier-McGregor card. That was amazing. But then right after that, unanimous decision against Yan Xiaonan. The split decision. It's been mostly these like kind of tough, grueling fights that she's been in against very, very credentialed opposition.
Can I dead wrong you here?
Yeah.
Can I dead wrong you? You said 3 of those were losses. One was a loss, and that was a split decision to Carla.
The Randa Marcos fight was a draw. Yes.
Right. That I remember thinking Rodriguez won that fight. Esparza had a couple of those split decisions that she kept advancing with. Hey, that's what the judges ruled it. But, majority draw with Calvillo, majority draw with Randa Marcos. Maybe that echoes the point here. Maybe there's times when she's solid, steady, not spectacular. That's hurt her on the cards in those 3 blemishes, if you want to call those 2 draws blemishes. Yeah, maybe that's the good point. Maybe this is the fight where she's got to work out of that Muay Thai clinch and try to Rich Franklin somebody, Luke, if you get my drift.
Dude, the reality is this about champions. Champions basically have to be more than competent. They kind of have to be a little bit good everywhere. In general, and there's some exceptions to this, obviously, but in general, what they need to be, especially like enduring champions at a bare minimum, they need to basically be good everywhere, but then they have to have a couple things where they're just like way better than the competition at. She's certainly got very good Muay Thai, but in the way that can be disrupted in MMA, it hasn't exactly been like a super dominant ace in the hole. It's been very, very good for her. Please don't misunderstand me, but it's not like it's, oh my God, these competitors don't know what to do with it. They can obviously figure out ways to minimize it or distract from it. And so as a consequence, to your point, I like the way you put it. She's definitely steady. She's definitely good. And she is definitely deserving of some good opportunities to see what she can do. But that last corner quite hasn't been rounded yet, where she's got real aces in the hole to lord over her opponents. We shall see on Saturday. But I think to your point, BC, that's what's been somewhat missing, if that makes sense.